Valentina could never have imagined finding herself in such a situation. When she married Peter, she knew he had a daughter from his first marriage, but the girl lived with Peter's mother and didn't cause any inconvenience. Valentina hadn't planned on having her own children yet. Today, however, her world turned upside down. That morning, Peter announced that his daughter would now be living with them. Valentina, it's a complicated situation. But you know what the doctor told my mom, progressive dementia. She might not even recognize any of us tomorrow. And what now? It's just not safe for Elena to stay with her. Besides, she has a father, which is me. Peter appealed to Valentina's emotions. But Valentina didn't want to listen. They lived in her premarital apartment. The 2 rooms were just enough for the 2 adults to live comfortably. Now, it seemed Valentina would have to make space for a completely foreign teenager. Considering that children generally irritated her, and she identified as child-free, it was hard to accept. On top of everything, Peter often left for work and was away for weeks at a time. This meant Valentina would have to feed, entertain, and take care of someone else's child with her own money. This was entirely unacceptable. Unable to stay silent, Valentina immediately voiced all her grievances to Peter. Maybe we should then exchange the apartment for a bigger one? Peter suggested, biting his tongue immediately. Due to his poor credit history, getting a loan was not a viable option, making this idea less than ideal. But Valentina was unstoppable. Are you kidding? Sell the apartment and take a loan myself so your brat can have a place to live? Valentina yelled, throwing a half-full mug of tea on the floor. And where's her mother? She should be involved in her daughter's life. Daughters should live with their mothers, not with their fathers and their wives. Who knows who her real father is, anyway? Peter clenched his teeth so hard they squeaked. Valentina froze. Usually, Peter conceded in arguments. But today was different. Elena will live with me, he said firmly. If she's such a problem for you, then I suggest we get a divorce. The girl has already suffered enough while her mother was entertaining truck drivers. I am her father, and I'm not abandoning her. The slamming door snapped Valentina out of her stupor. Could he really bring his daughter here? She didn't want to divorce her beloved husband. Peter was a good man, with no bad habits and a decent income. Valentina had taken a long time to get married, carefully selecting candidates. In the end, she married the persistent and courteous Peter at almost 35. He had won her over with his signature mushroom omelette, and when he renovated the apartment, all her doubts vanished. Valentina was out of sorts the entire evening. She couldn't even imagine how to interact with her new stepdaughter. She called her mother for advice. He brought her after all, her mother grumbled. I always told you, why do you need a man with baggage? And you kept saying, there are no others, I love him. Well, now take care of his daughter, instead of having your own. She won't even thank you, you're not her real mother. After this conversation, Valentina was completely disheartened. When she heard the front door slam, she decided not to leave the bedroom. Let Peter see right away that his daughter was not welcome here. Valentina was convinced there had to be other options for arranging care for his daughter. Even if they couldn't track down his wayward ex-wife, they could certainly find her mother. The old lady surely still lived at the same place and would gladly take in her granddaughter. Hello, will you join us for dinner? Peter asked amicably as he peeked into the room. I'm with Elena. Come out and meet her. Valentina sighed. After all, it wasn't the teenager's fault that the adults couldn't sort things out among themselves. Peter's daughter turned out to be small and awkward. She didn't look like a 15-year-old at all. The girl sat embarrassedly on a chair in the corner of the kitchen, clutching a sports bag with her belongings. She seemed to realize that Valentina wasn't happy to see her, and she looked hopefully at her father. "This is Valentina, and this is my daughter, Elena." "Elena, this is Aunt Valentina," Peter mumbled nervously, like a schoolboy before an exam. "For now, we'll set up a place for you in the living room. There's a desk there for doing your homework. I'll go to the school tomorrow to submit your documents." The next morning, Peter indeed left to handle the school transfer, leaving his daughter with Valentina. During breakfast, Valentina scrutinized the girl without ceremony. Elena seemed to Valentina like an unwelcome reminder that her husband had once loved someone else. Or maybe he still loved her deep down. To make matters worse, Elena didn't resemble her father much. She had blonde hair, a snub nose, and dimples on her cheeks. It seemed Peter's first wife must have been quite a beauty. "Dad said I should ask for a shelf in the closet." "I need somewhere to put my things," Elena said quietly. "Well, if your dad said so, he can give you a shelf." "I don't have any free space." "And I hope you'll be living with your mother soon, not us," Valentina replied sharply. "My mom died," the girl said softly. "We observed the 40 days last week." Valentina grimaced. "What about your grandmother, your mother's mother?" She was eager to send the girl to some relative. "Grandma Maria? She's in a nursing home. We visited her there a couple of times with Grandma Nina," Elena explained innocently. "But Grandma Maria is very sick. Last time, a nurse had to bring her in a wheelchair so we could see her." Valentina could hardly suppress a sigh of disappointment. It seemed this girl was really here to stay, with only her father as her close relative. "Aunt Valentina, don't worry. I'll only stay until the holidays, then I'll go to my grandmother's sister in Karelia." "Dad said you're worried I'll be a bother." "But I won't, I promise. I can mop the floors, wash the dishes, clean the windows. Grandma taught me everything, said it would be useful if I ever lived with a stepmother." "Live here, what do I care?" Valentina shrugged. Suddenly, she felt ashamed for having immediately lashed out at the girl. She turned to the stove and busied herself with making lunch, as if no one else was in the kitchen. An hour later, a satisfied Peter returned. After visiting 4 nearby schools, he had managed to enroll Elena in a prestigious lyceum. But it had taken more than just paperwork. He had to slip the principal some money for curtains and floor paint. "But it's a lyceum," he shared enthusiastically. "I managed to get her into a cadet class, you could say through connections. We'll need to buy a uniform and a few other things over the weekend. Here's the list." Valentina frowned at her husband. Had he really decided to enroll his daughter in the most expensive school, filled with privileged kids? "And by the way, Valentina, I've been called out on a job," Peter continued, as if nothing were amiss. "I'm leaving tomorrow. Can you help Elena with the uniform? I'll leave the money." "You're leaving? And what about me?" Valentina looked up in surprise. "Dad, don't leave," Elena suddenly whined. She didn't want to be left alone with a barely known aunt. But there was nothing to be done. The next morning, after kissing his lovely ladies on both cheeks, Peter left for his trip. At first, Valentina didn't want to do anything for Elena, but then she remembered her promise to her husband to take care of his daughter. So, gritting her teeth, she first went to the tailor's workshop and then to the bookstore. Elena's first day at school didn't go well. This was evident when she returned home in tears. Although she tried not to show her emotions to Valentina, it was obvious. "Did something happen? Can I transfer to another school?" Elena asked, sniffing. "Dad said this is the best school," Valentina shrugged. "What happened?" Elena couldn't hold back any longer. She explained how she was constantly bullied at her old school for not having a trendy phone and nice clothes. And at the new school, it continued from day one. The class leaders immediately singled her out as not coming from a wealthy family and started picking on her. They even took her backpack and recorded everything on video. Her grandmother never defended her, and now her father was gone. Listening to the story, Valentina suddenly realized how much Elena was like her 30 years ago. Back in the turbulent 90s, she was also the class scapegoat. Valentina knew firsthand how cruel teenagers could be. Right, get ready. We're going to school, Valentina said, getting up from the couch. Why? Elena asked, scared. Come on, we need to teach those bullies a lesson. Half an hour later, Valentina was already sitting in the principal's office, methodically explaining her rights, the principal's responsibilities, and the bullying happening within the school. Fortunately, Valentina was adept at finding the right words. Several years of working in the prosecutor's office had taught her to speak with people in the right tone. Not only do you have extortion here, but also the bullying of teenagers. Should I contact the media or go straight to the authorities? Why are students evaluated not by their knowledge, but by their appearance? Valentina interrogated the principal. In response, the principal promised to immediately address the situation with the students and personally take Elena under her wing. Valentina left the school with her head held high. Elena, astonished, followed close behind. For the first time in her life, someone had stood up for her, and it was a complete stranger. And now let's go shopping. We need to unwind after such stress, Valentina suggested unexpectedly. We'll buy you some new clothes. You really do look a bit unfashionable. Dad? Dad? Aunt Valentina, and I almost finished your truck puzzle. Come see, Elena exclaimed as Peter, returning from his trip, cautiously opened the door to his own apartment. How had his girls managed without him for almost a week? But the scene before him was quite unexpected. On the table was an almost completed puzzle of a huge truck against a mountain backdrop. Sitting at the table was a smiling Valentina, and Elena, who had jumped up, was now pulling him towards the table to show off.